A good horror game is something special. It is able not just to challenge us with its gameplay or tell a good story, but to scare us, to haunt our dreams and idle thoughts, even to make us question our own perceptions of reality. In this podcast, we meet the developers of both existing popular horror titles and hotly anticipated upcoming ones to discuss how they do it, what inspires them, and all things spooky and unnerving. Welcome to Talking Terror, the official podcast of the Horror Game Awards. Hello and welcome to Talking Terror, the official podcast of the Horror Game Awards. I'm Phil, and today joined by my lovely co-host Ash,
Hi.
and we have the pleasure of speaking to Kyle Rowley, who is the game director for Alan Wake 2 over at Remedy. So thanks for joining us, Kyle.
No problem. Very excited to talk to you guys. All things horror, I hope, maybe.
Absolutely all things horror, but I think first, it's been a bit of like since Alan Wake came out. Obviously, there's been a huge positive reception to it. You got it was a Critics' Choice at Golden Joysticks, various game awards, Dice Awards, and obviously, of course, the most important ones: the best story, best soundtrack, and game of the year at the Horror Game Awards themselves. How does it feel? Is this something like when you were making it, you were like, yeah, this is good, or is this like completely surreal and taking you by surprise?
When we're developing it, obviously we aim to make a good game. I don't think anybody basically takes awards for granted. And actually, when we've been doing the kind of like award shows, as you say, and like every time we kind of attend one, we're like, try and have the best time you can, enjoy yourself, because there's no guarantee we'll ever basically get to come to one of these again. So we definitely were not really expecting it. We obviously, when we set out to start the project, one of the things that we set out to do was like, we really want to try and hit like a 90 Metacritic, like, because that's like everybody always wants to try and achieve that. We didn't quite make it. We were like 1 point off, and I was super annoyed for the longest time afterwards. There's a photo of me that our PR communications guy took after the reviews came out. Everyone's jumping around the office going like, really good reviews, and I'm sat there at my desk like, I'm really annoyed right now. Like, so we always tried to make things better, obviously. But yeah, like super happy with everything. Like, and now, like after 6 months or whatever it's been since the game comes out, looking back, it's been a really awesome experience for me personally and everyone on the team, and just honored to be able to kind of represent Remedy at those shows, because they're really good fun, and obviously when we've been winning some, it's been really nice. So.
Is there like a point where you think, oh man, we've really got something special here during development? Or is it really just a case of, okay, looking back, I can see why we won these awards now that I'm out of it?
I would say that the game is rubbish until like just before it comes out. So it's like, we were constantly basically having like, we have our own internal user research department, which is basically where we will bring in players from outside of the company to test the game. And I remember when we did the first one, and it was like, I remember looking at, because we asked people to score it like out of 10, and they scored different aspects of the game, like how's the combat, how's the story. Story was always scoring pretty well, like people really resonated with it. But combat to begin with, it was like 3 out of 10, and I was like, oh my god. And then I remember like talking to some of us core management team, and they were like, don't worry, we always get the combat to come together at the end. It's a Remedy game, we'll be fine. And I'm sat there going like, oh, we've got a lot of work to do. So, you know, and as the course of development, though, we kept doing those UR tests, and the kind of score was gradually creeping up. By the time we reached like shipping, the scores were like 9 out of 10s, like when we were like, okay, if we can fix all the bugs we've got, which we had a copious amount of, like when we were shipping, then I think we'll have a good game. And I think that the thing that I was always kind of very proud of when making the game is I felt like there was nothing quite like Alan Wake 2 out in the market. And I think we were doing a lot of new things, so I was excited to just see how people reacted to those concepts that we had in the game, basically. So Yeah, I would say that we were basically thinking, okay, we have a problem here until towards the end, and then we're like, okay, maybe it's gonna be okay in the end.
Yeah, I will say, like even after it released, and obviously your team was like extremely hard at work, putting out, doing things like fixing more bugs as people reported them, and even something I appreciate as a content creator, making sure getting like the soundtrack whitelisted for YouTube and stuff like that. Like so much stuff that came out, which just message to any other developers, do that more. Great. Um,
Our audio team was like basically watching Twitch streamers or watching people comment, because some Twitch streamers were still getting takedown requests even though we'd whitelisted stuff. So our audio team was like, as soon as they saw that, they were straight on it, trying to contact people and go like, you can't, like, we've already got this stuff whitelisted, why is it getting taken down? So yeah, very active. And I was on like Reddit, I was on Reset Era, I was on Twitter, like during that first launch week, basically responding to people, trying to get as much information as I can about like bugs that we were having, just because the game in terms of like scope for us was pretty big. We had like, obviously the game was more open than the first game, and we had this kind of like dual narrative where you could switch backwards and forwards, basically various different points in the story. So the number of permutations in terms of bug potential was pretty high. So yeah, we were basically firefighting this, and we obviously did a lot of QA, but it's nothing compared to when you kind of release that out and there's so many people playing it. So we were trying to actively fix as much as possible. Yeah.
It's kind of crazy, like how many hats you have to wear as a game director, like scouring Twitter to look for bugs and everything. Like it's wild that that's part of the job as well.
Yeah, I mean, like actually, if you talk to our PR guy, they'd be like, "Stop posting on Twitter, stop posting on Reset Era, stop asking questions. Like, we will do it, don't worry." And I'm like, I need to do it. I need to get like, I had this like, I needed to make sure that the game was what it was meant to be. So I needed to get all those things fixed, and I needed to track them once we'd even found them. I was like, "Is this fixed? Are we fixing this? Like, when is this thing being fixed?" Like, and they're like, "Oh, shut up! We're gonna we're gonna fix it. Just get off the internet, go home, like chill out."
Oh
Yeah.
man, I relate so hard to like feeling like a perfectionist though. And like Alan Wake 2, do you feel like Alan Wake 2 is like fully your baby from all of that extra effort
Yeah,
you
I
put
mean,
in?
like I think Sam when I joined, because I originally worked at Remedy on Quantum Break. I started in 2013, and I was lead designer on Quantum Break, and then I worked on the Crossfire franchise for a little bit, and then I left Remedy and went to work on Cyberpunk 2077 for 3.5 years, and then I came back to work on Alan Wake 2, and like at the time the team was shipping Control, or kind of in the process of shipping Control, so Sam was kind of writing, still working on Control, and there was like our EP was there, and there was just me, so it's like we had like basically very very early like story concept that Sam had, but that was basically what we had. So I basically saw the game go from like nothing to ship. So of course, over the course of 5 years, you kind of get very like, okay, and not like, there's also just the fact that my name is on there saying I directed it. So I was like, this game's got to be goddamn good, otherwise I'm going to be really annoyed. Like,
yeah,
so.
because am I right in thinking this was your first gig as game director?
Yeah, I was a design director on Cyberpunk, but that wasn't the game director on that. So this is the first one where like me and Sam co-directed it together, but like in terms of like creative, we were kind of responsible, and that just means that there's like a significant amount of pressure. And then so I was like, and these games are expensive to make, so I was like, okay, I just need to make sure it's really good, like, and that's basically what I focused on for 5 years. So.
And only got an 89 on Metacritic.
I know,
So
and I
all for
was like,
nothing.
that's why I was sat at my desk with my head in my hands, going, "No."
Ugh.
Oh, never mind. Yeah, it's up. Next game, you'll be fine.
The numbers don't matter, honestly. Alan Wake 2, you don't need me to tell you. It's incredible. It's a work of art. It's a cinematic masterpiece as well as a game one. Like, I honestly, I feel like it transcends Metacritic. So I feel I've got to walk back my sarcasm there, because I'm like the biggest Alan Wake 2 fan. So I need to be like, it's amazing. It's
Yeah,
amazing.
well, I very much appreciate that. I think that I've said this many times before, but I really dislike review time. Like I like the process of making something, but when you make something for 5 years and then basically you send it out and then people spend, I don't know, week, if they're lucky, to kind of then put a score on it basically after 5 years of development. And I really dislike that whole process, because mainly just because I'm worried that like people aren't going to like it, and I really want people to like the stuff I work on. So
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've not from a game, but I have had that experience of like creating something and spending a lot of time, and then someone like looks at it and like goes, "Well, all this is rubbish. You need to change this.
Yeah. I mean, like, I think there's always this kind of sense of anxiety that can come from putting a lot of yourself into something and then releasing it out for people to basically, like, they'll judge it however they see fit. They have no attachment to it. So, and in games and stuff like that, obviously, then they're paying their own hard-earned money for it. So people have a right to have an opinion on how it is. But I think as a creator, as someone who works on creating stuff, I think it's always just a bit of a nerve-wracking time, I would say. And I think that that's the case for, I would say, a lot of game developers have that same feeling. But it's part of the process, and luckily we kind of came out and the game was good, so it was all right.
Death of the author, baby. Death of the author.
Yeah.
Have to deal with.
Sometimes I'm like, I feel like I want to write a book. And then I'm like, why would I do that to myself? Like,
Yeah.
why would I put myself through? It's like by myself as well. It's like no one I can even like palm it off onto. Like, oh no, it wasn't my fault. It was this person's fault. It's like, no, this is. I guess I'd be like, oh, they edited it out. It wasn't what I really wanted. They took it away.
Yeah, there you go.
I mean, you've seen what happens to authors now as well. So like, you don't want to end up there, attached to your typewriter.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I've seen what happens. Yeah, I don't want to follow the path of Wake. That would not be a good one to go down.
Yeah, but I mean, with something like this, and obviously Alan Wake's a pre-established IP. The first game
came out in 2010.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Sorry, I'm just realizing my age as I'm calculating like how long ago it was as well. So, how much does that kind of like, as someone taking on like game director role, does that like kind of feel like, does that up the pressure, or does that feel like something that you can kind of go into and go, right, I know what this is, I've got a direction, or is it more restrictive?
I think that for Wake in particular, it had such a cult following. It's like that it reached on launch. It didn't reach that wider audience, but over time, through word of mouth, it's kind of like spread. And now I think the people who really like Alan Wake really, 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 really like Alan Wake. So there was always that. Okay, I think there was a preconception maybe in players' heads about what like potential Alan Wake 2 would look like, and we basically just tried to not think about that, because it's quite easy to go onto like online and kind of search for people's thoughts on like what they would like in a sequel, but we didn't really do that. We just kind of went, okay, what is it that we would like to do with this game? What was it we didn't personally feel went super well in the first game, and how can we basically improve upon it? And then just kind of that's basically all we focused on. I think because we introduced a new playable character, and obviously we kind of tried to split that kind of experience between Alan and Saga like 50-50. We wanted to make sure that Alan, because it's part of the Alan Wake franchise, that he was a big part of the game still, because it would have been quite easy for us to kind of lean more into the Saga side of stuff and kind of have Alan in periphery. But it was really important to us that he was kind of a key part of the whole playable experience. So you play him enough, but also then his stuff bleeds over into Saga's story. So those are the kind of main things we were worried about. We weren't really too worried about like, the first game was kind of slightly more action focused. How are people going to react to the fact that we switched the genre around and making it scarier and making it a mature game rather than I think teen rated. That was what the first one was. So yeah, we really focused on what we wanted to create. Weren't too worried about the other stuff. And when we started having play tests, no one really came back. And we do a lot of like user research even on a concept level. So once we had a concept that we were kind of happy with, we would then kind of do research with the concept of external partners to try and see how player sentiment is around the concept. And basically, it kind of like, it was never came back of like, oh, this is being changed too much, or we don't like this concept, or you need like those kind of things. So we were kind of confident that the kind of ideas that we had and the direction we wanted to take were going to be fine for the franchise overall.
Did you have a bit that tested really well for like horror and scariness? Was there a standout part when you were doing all these tests where you're like, yes, this is the good bit?
Oh, I mean,
or
like
too scary as well?
I mean, I think, well, we were getting feedback about jump scares actually. And I remember even inside of one mission, the Valhalla nursing home, we kind of ramp it up a bit. And I remember it kind of got like people going like, I'm not sure about the jump scares there. And then even inside the team, people were like, I think there's maybe a bit too many jump scares in this mission. And I was like, no, there's not enough. This is fine. We can keep it as it is. It's fine. It's the last one. Come on, we can kind of ramp it up a bit. but then overall that the nursing home mission that basically scored like the highest in terms of like atmosphere and horror, and that's probably because it was the mission which we worked on the longest. Like we basically during the course of development we do like a proof of concept, which is where we kind of try and prove out all the elements of the game in kind of one package, and it will be like super rough. So like, you know, the levels will be kind of gray and very basic lighting. The characters will kind of like be not finished, and the kind of core mechanics aren't done. But like there'll be a version of every kind of feature that we want to try and do, and it will basically build a version of the game which basically tries to prove the concept. And that mission was what we used actually for the proof of concept for that project. So basically, it was worked on for 4.5 years that mission.
Yeah.
So we did it like the way that we did our horror was that we actually had once the kind of core of the mission, like story wise and structure wise, was there. One of our designers, Natalie, she went through and did a horror pass across all of the missions, which was basically a document.
What a great job! Sorry, the horror pass.
Yeah. Well, yeah. She would basically go through and kind of write a document which kind of defined like at each beat, like what kind of things we wanted to do to kind of scare the player or build up anticipation. And then we would map it across like an actual like pacing chart, and then audio would do the same thing. So they would have their own basically pacing chart mapped off of the designer's chart, and that we did that like in quite a lot of detail for REO5. And over the course of development, we kind of ran out of time, so we're like, do the horror pass. It's like, okay, it's done. I'm like, yeah, sounds good. Let's go. And then the next one, okay, we need to do a horror pass on this one. But you know, we took all the learnings that we did on that proof of concept and the horror pass we did on Return 5, the nursing home, and then tried to apply it as best as we could to the rest of the game. But you can kind of see from that mission that it has more, I guess, say more of the horror there in the kind of build up that you would traditionally see in a horror game than basically in some of the other missions.
Yeah, I think it's also helped as well. Like I always think when you introduce two elements, it's either children or old ladies
Yeah.
in horror. They're always like the most kind of extreme kind of scares, I think, at that point.
Yeah, I think that, and I really liked that mission because we got a lot of the quirky Alan Wake-ness in there. Like the characters that are in that mission are very quirky, small town Americana with that kind of slightly odd darkness to them. And it's kind of, I think that was something, that's why we picked it for like our proof of concept as well, because I think one of the things that sets Alan Wake apart from other horror franchises is that quirkiness and that kind of like over the top characters and that small town Americana vibe. And that's kind of just a key part of the IP. And we really wanted to kind of prove that and show how we would bring that kind of side of Alan Wake's IP into the horror experience. And I think that the old people in that nursing home and those characters are kind of like a kind of perfect example of us trying to achieve that, basically. So it was a cool mission.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't want to go into too much because I think it's spoilers to mention too much about that, particularly kind of how the horror is kind of undercut with a lot of tragedy towards the end. If you know the first game and stuff, but obviously there's a lot of moving parts and all this. In terms of you, as well as doing the horror, you got the blend of live action, all stuff like that, and you've got all these different elements. Like, how much of a struggle was it to juggle all of that and like put it all together, or did it kind of flow naturally?
Well, we've obviously dabbled in live action before in some of our other games, so we've kind of got a bit better over time, I would say. I think one of the things which we wanted to try and do for Wake 2 was that, you know, in Control we also used live action. We used it kind of like in the game world to kind of showcase some of the stuff with Trench, and we know we wanted to kind of use that technique here, but we wanted to try and find a way to kind of again tie it more into the narrative and the supernatural, and then also utilize actually full screen live action, so like where we have it in a linear format, but like, you know, which we tried to do in Quantum Break, but it felt a bit, one of the learnings we took, it kind of felt a bit disjointed from the kind of game. It felt like you were going from game to show to game to show, and we really wanted to find a way to kind of make the live action as seamless as possible inside the context of the world of Alan Wake. So that's kind of like why we ended up utilizing it the way we did inside the Dark Place with Alan, where like he kind of slips into a different reality effectively, and you know, the Dark Place is kind of made up of dream logic and these kind of nightmare scenarios, so we could kind of contextualize us changing the medium of the storytelling through this kind of like conduit of the dark place, and this idea that it has that the weight can kind of slip in and out of these different realities. So I think that we were really trying to make sure that all the things that we learned from Control and from Quantum, and like how we can use live action to kind of for storytelling, we wanted to kind of like make sure it was as seamless as possible in this game. And I think it didn't really, like, for the longest time we never actually had live action in the dark place, and it was because one of the reasons that we did it was just because we ran out of cinematic budget. Like we were like, we have this story and it's really long and we have a lot of stuff we need to say, and then our kind of like cinematics team were like, well, you've got like 30 minutes, and we're like, shit, that's not enough time. What do we and we were like, we need like at least an hour, and they were like, yeah, no, it's not gonna happen. And we are like, oh my god, how do we tell the story? And then it kind of so it kind of came out of a bit of a constraint. We ended up with more than 30 minutes worth of cinematics, actually, like actual like rendered cinematics. But as part of that kind of like, how do we solve this problem, the idea of utilizing live action, but then trying to find a way to kind of make it so it kind of works inside the kind of constraints of Alan Wake came about. And that's why it's basically completely limited in terms of like full screen to the dark place. That's why we found a nice way to basically tell the story that we wanted to tell of the dark place through the live action. So yeah, it was difficult.
And then you were like, let's just make a whole film of Yontonyo on top of that as well.
Yeah, I mean that it's funny because like we showed that at Remedy before the game came out, and everyone was like, what the fuck? Like, what? Like, what? This is in the game? We're like, yeah. They're like, you mean like that whole when did we make this? Like, because no one really knew, because we had a separate live action production crew working on stuff, and a lot of the team didn't even know that this kind of like this short film even existed or what it was about. Because like for the longest time, it was just in Finnish, like because we didn't have the subtitles, so like even like if you could watch it, you were like, I have no idea. Can you imagine? Like I was watching it, going, what the fuck is this? Like, what is going on here, Sam? What is like? I was watching it, I totally didn't know. And then he sent me the script in English, and I was like, okay, it kind of makes a bit more sense. And I watched it again. I was going, no, still not. Doesn't make any sense. It's only when we actually got it done, and then the subtitles were there, and it was all come together. I was like, okay, I kind of get what's going on here. But yeah, so I mean, we did a lot of ambitious stuff in that game with like, and I think that people were surprised even inside the studio about all the stuff. I remember we were just before launch and we kind of asked the studio to play the game, or actually we didn't even ask at that point. People just started playing it because they'd kind of run out of bugs to fix. And someone sent a really nice long message on the kind of channel that we had for the game saying like, I kind of didn't understand what we were building, really. I was just kind of like, I saw cool stuff, but I didn't really understand it until I played it. And then I was like, this game's crazy. Like, what the hell's going on? Like, they really sent a really nice message explaining kind of like all the things that they didn't even know we had, and like how everything tied together and everything. So yeah, it was like I said, it all really came together right at the end, as it normally does with games. It's really stressful.
Yeah,
I'd really like to work on a game where we're like, oh, this is actually really good. Like halfway through development or something. That'd be great.
I mean, I do still find it kind of incredible the way like you've got building these live action things. You got Yotanyo is obviously kind of all in Finnish. This very experimental, tells a quite dark story, and then you've got the Herald of Darkness stuff, obviously big rock opera chaos and everything, and then obviously Peter Franzen trying to miraculously keeping a straight face while he's doing all these commercials. It just
those are brilliant, and we've got all the propping lying around the office, so it's awesome as well. It's like all the prop, like the seagull and everything, the bird. Yeah, I mean, like I think the change that we made compared to like what we did on Quantum's like live action stuff was actually produced in the US and through Microsoft. And for this one, we basically hired like one of the biggest production companies in Finland, who basically do a lot of the like Finnish movies, a lot of the Finnish TV shows. They kind of, and our cinematics director, Anssi Mata, is actually like a live action director in Finland. So he has a lot of contacts with people inside the industry. So basically like we got together a production crew and did the whole shoot in Finland near the office. So it was much easier for us to kind of like, communication was easier. We were basically on Remedy side completely managing the shoots and the production of it. So and it allowed us to basically be a bit more flexible in terms of like when we would do the shoots versus like when we needed to do stuff with like motion capture and vice versa. So production wise, it was a lot easier, and it's so like TV production is super efficient. Like Sam came back from some of the shoots going like, we need to get better at we need to get better at production. Like these TV shows, they're like, we're going to do this and this is the schedule, and then it's like bam 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 bam, it's done, we go on to the next scene. Like it's just like in games we're like, oh, what the hell are we working on? Oh, I can't find what feature we're working on. Oh, it's like so it's like we would learn a lot about like how we want to aim to kind of get our productions better, also just by working with these kind of super talented production studios in Finland about doing like live action stuff. So yeah, it was pretty crazy.
If I do I remember correctly where you spoke before about I think I've asked you why you weren't live action in the game, considering we got Mr. Sam Lake in there, and you were just like, hey, they cut me out on the day. And was that what happened with the live action part for Kyle Rowley?
No, I was. They were like, you could be like an extra, and I was like, no. Like, why would I? I'm not. Why would I be in it? No, if I'm going to be in it, I'm going to be the main character or something. Like, I'm not going to be. If Sam's like a main character, I need to be a main character. And then they were like, well, okay, maybe not this game then. And I was like, yeah, okay, but the next one.
Yeah,
another one. Yeah.
I remember you talking about being a biker, and then someone else had come in and done it, but it must have been because you were like, I'm not just being a biker. Excuse me, call me Saga.
Exactly. Oh yeah. I'll make a beautiful Saga. Yeah, I mean, like I think that we do have a lot of people in the game as like NPCs, because we basically have an in-house scanning technology. So a lot of the NPCs that you see in the kind of living world are kind of people who work at Remedy. It's quite funny, like when you're playing, like, oh, there's Richard, he's the kind of hotel clerk or whatever. Whatever, it's just like funny. But I never scan myself. Like every time they do a scanning session, I'm like away or not available. So I don't think I'm even scanned. So I can't even in the game as like an NPC. It's like, but then I would have been like, oh, I'm an NPC. I'm kind of like the person who's lost their keys. Then I'd be like, I don't want to be that person. Take me out. I want to be someone else. Like I want to be someone more important. So,
You've got to make a whole cinematic universe around it. It's like Artie the janitor, in it. You can be like Kyle, the key lost man, and it's like, oh, okay, I'm going to open a key to another universe. Step on through, player.
Yeah. Mr. Door, step aside.
Yeah, exactly. It's Mr. Key now, baby.
See, if it was me personally, I think if I was in a horror game, I'd want to be someone who died in some sort of horribly gruesome way. Personally, I don't know why, but I just really like to see.
Well, Sam got that as well. It's like it's not fair. Like he got everything. He got dying in a gruesome way, like multiple times actually, in multiple different formats. He got to do dancing. He got to do singing. He got to do acting. He got to do slow dancing. He got to do actual like proper dancing. He did all sorts of stuff. Yeah. And then Sam was like, "I'm too busy. I've got too much stuff to do." I'm like, Sam, there's a scene in there's a commercial with Ilmo, and he's like, I'm writer, producer, director, and I was like, this is just Sam talking through Ilmo. I feel like at this point, like, because he was like doing all sorts. He was acting. He was trying to direct stuff. He was doing writing. He was, I don't know. He was like, I'm really tired. I'm like, yeah, well, you've kind of done all roles in this game. To be fair, Sam. So, yeah, it's funny.
Oh, so you've talked about it took like 5 years kind of developing from kind of the initial concepts through. Am I right? Like obviously there was a point where remember Sam saying that there wasn't the money to make Alan Wake 2. I think that was when Quantum Break ended up getting made. So at that point was Alan Wake 2 basically just a concept, and like the story we got only really started to evolve once you got a publisher? Or was this already an inkling of it beforehand?
We had super like vague ideas about what Alan Wake 2's story could potentially be during Quantum Break development, but it changed so much. Like when I came on, because like obviously that was just a very vague, like high level idea, and like it basically we couldn't really lock down the story until we figured out what the game structure was be ultimately, because us having these kind of two protagonists and these kind of this dual narrative, which basically a player can switch between, altered how we wrote the story effectively, because we knew that the player could perceive things in different orders. So we tried to make the narratives echo each other more. So like it didn't really, we tried to basically structure in a way that it didn't really matter which way you played it, it would still make sense, even if you kind of played through one side completely. and then switched to the other and played that one completely, or if you kind of like switch between them as you played through. And credit to the narrative team ultimately, because I feel like we definitely hit that goal was definitely hit. Like, I don't feel like if you play in a certain way, you get a better experience than another way. It's just different, and you perceive things in a different way. And one of the things we wanted to try and do was, like, if you did decide to play through, for example, the final draft, and you did it in a different order, maybe you would perceive things slightly differently, or you'd have a slightly different perspective. We do a lot of like foreshadowing of events, but like quite subtly, or we try and layer things in that you kind of like, you don't really don't notice them on the first playthrough, but when you play through it again, you see it and it gives you slightly different context. So we really wanted to try and make it like a layered experience like that. So like, I think there's an episode of Extras where Ben Stiller is talking about the best movies, and he's like, you can watch this. He's like saying, you can watch this movie multiple times. You watch it through the first time and it's great. But if you watch it through again, then it's like, there's loads of things that you discover and kind of like, we kind of structured the game like that, basically. Ben Stiller was a key inspiration for the game structure of Alan Wake 2. But yeah, it was a difficult thing, and I think when we were thinking about back then, when we were doing like American Nightmare, basically was like there was an actual Alan Wake 2 prototype that we did like after Alan Wake 1, which didn't move forward, but then that became basically, all those ideas were taken into American Nightmare. And then after that, and when we started working on Quantum, and we had these other ideas, they were kind of separated. And actually over the course of like, between Quantum's development and us making Alan Wake 2, there was many other versions of Alan Wake 2 that existed. Control started out as Alan Wake 2, actually. It started, like, I think actually most projects we've worked on since Alan Wake started out as Alan Wake 2, and then basically pivoted into these other games. Like originally there was a concept where it was called AWE, I think, and it was like Alan and some people going out to investigate AWEs, and then we were like, and then like there was concepts of like, there was like ideas of like FBC as part of that, and then basically at some point that was like multiplayer, and then some people were like, well, this doesn't really feel like an Alan Wake game, so then it got spun up into like a different IP, and that basically effectively over time became Control. So it's like, it's a big part of Remedy's history and kind of like how, and a lot of our games actually. So
I love how everything is just a little bit Alan Wake. Like, that's the Remedy IP. It's just Alan's here all the time.
Yeah, it's like it starts as a spark of Alan, and we're like, it doesn't quite work as an Alan, but there's things here which would work. So, yeah. I mean, Quantum was the same. So
isn't there a load of QR codes? Is it in Alan Wake Remastered that kind of lead to teasers for Alan Wake 2 as well?
We were working on Alan Wake 2 pre-production when we decided to do Remastered. So we started actively adding content into Remaster, which would set up Alan Wake 2, but we didn't talk about it. There's like maps that got updated, like with new locations on them. Like there was those QR codes which had links to videos, which were kind of setting stuff up. Yeah. So and then obviously we kind of like that all culminated in us doing the the expansion for Control. So, and where we basically kind of like not outright said it, but kind of like highly suggested there was something going on in Bright Falls. So yeah, it was like, that was a really interesting time, because we were also we were in the middle of doing our like proof of concept, that mission I was talking about, when we were also trying to do remastered stuff, and also trying to make sure that the stuff we were doing in Control, kind of everything fit together, especially that early on when we hadn't locked a lot of stuff down. So we ran the risk of basically locking ourselves into situations like, or story content that we didn't necessarily want to have in there. And I think overall Remedy as a studio, when we do our storytelling, we're quite ambiguous on a lot of things. We leave things up for interpretation. So we kind of lent on that a bit more, I think, than being quite explicit. It leaves us room to maneuver if we decide to change our minds. So, yeah.
With the move to like from an action genre to more survival horror, like in terms of games that inspired that, I always look at like the way Saga and Alan play is kind of like the Resident Evil 2 A and B scenarios, Claire and Leon type thing, but were you drawing on other games, or were you kind of like?
Yeah, for sure. Like, I mean, when I started in 2019, Resident Evil 2 remake had just come out, I think. And we obviously saw the popularity there, and we were like, oh, this says that like horror was basically back then like going on the up again. Like there was the Resident Evil 7 and Resident Evil 2 remake basically came out around about like within a short span of time, and they both did really well and really resonated with people. And then also on the kind of like outside of games, like popular culture front, A24 with like Robert Eggers doing The Witch and The Lighthouse, and then Ari Aster doing Hereditary and Midsummer. Those kind of things like also just I felt like elevated horror to a kind of a new like a new place in people's kind of consciousness when it comes to like how they perceive horror. So there was that combined with like games kind of doing well. So it kind of like it spurred us on to kind of change the genre or the game to be slightly more horror focused rather than kind of like this thriller action side that we originally did with the first game. And you know, outside of Resident Evil 2, like I think that we did also, I think our 3Cs, like how our game controls is kind of similar, but I would say that actually, Evil Within in terms of like being more psychological, and also Silent Hill in terms of its like more psychological stories, like I would say like narrative wise a bit more closer. And we did really like, I personally really like the fact that, like, for example, in Silent Hill, it's more about, despite what I said about earlier about the jump scares in the nursing home, I kind of like the fact it's more about the atmosphere in the story and less about, blood and guts, or like, kind of gory horror or etc. So I really like the psychological aspects of those games. And, we always, when we talked about horror inside the studio, we talked about it on the moment to moment level, which is like, how do we scare the player in the moment? But then also like, once they've kind of finished the game or they've kind of stopped playing for the night, what are they thinking about when they're kind of going to bed or kind of when they're in the shower? We really wanted that horror to kind of linger there in the minds, which was kind of where our kind of like story layer of the horror, which is kind of like where inspirations from like Hereditary and Midsummer and those kind of movies came from, because I think they're kind of like that horror is character driven and story driven rather than jump scare and atmosphere. So it's like, what do the characters go through like psychologically, and how do you perceive the stories and those kind of elements? So we kind of thought about horror in those two different ways, like on the story level, and then also like moment to moment, like how do I feel and what's the atmosphere, and like how do we kind of scare the player that way. And those are kind of tackled by two different teams in a way. Like I said, we did the horror pass, which is kind of more about atmosphere and kind of like how we do scare the player, and then also the narrative side was covered by the narrative team and Sam. So
do you think you'd want to add in a load of gore to like kind of Alan Wake in the future? Like maybe the DLCs will just be Alan Wake with a chainsaw, you know what I mean?
I mean, like we added like the wound system for this game, which was kind of like to give that slightly more visceral feel. In the first game, enemies just vanished and they didn't really, it was a team rated game, so like, when you killed them, they kind of just vanished into darkness. Here we wanted to give a bit more. Actually, originally, like I really wanted it to be that like these characters would all feel like they were people. So like that, you felt almost like a sense of guilt when you kind of killed someone, because you knew that. And we tried to kind of like, it's kind of a bit subtle, but at the start when you're playing Nightingale, we really wanted to give, like, obviously it's revealed later on that he's a Taken. So, and we wanted to kind of put you in the shoes of a Taken and how they perceive the world. So actually he's kind of scared, and like as he comes out into that world, and he's kind of like, people are shining lights and he's kind of reacting in a like I'm scared kind of way, but to other people he's acting like a Taken basically. So like we really wanted to kind of give, there's like I wanted to have this idea that you could even sympathize with people who've been turned into Taken, and then because they're kind of more physical in the game and you can kill them, and there's like old people and there's actual like different townspeople, it kind of gives you this added level of like, I kind of feel bad actually that I'm, because I know that this isn't their fault and they've just been kind of interned, but they were people before, So I kind of wanted to bring a bit of that into it. I'm not sure how much of it came across, but that was kind of like the original kind of idea about why, for example, they're kind of more physical, and they kind of, and then because they're more physical, we wanted to add more like visceral experience. So we added the kind of wound and blood and stuff like that onto them, which was completely new for us. We've never done anything like that before. So
I think with the Nightingale opening, every time I've played it, I've gone, tease, he's nude. Like that was my takeaway. But like I think the Taken having like feelings and the physicality and the wound system definitely all works really well. I think measuring gore is definitely a great way of upping the psychological ante. And I know you spoke about A24 films before being a big influence on that, and they're another one that really does that well. And I'm glad you mentioned it, mostly because I like pitched Alan Wake 2 every time I wrote something about it. I was like, an A24 game, so at least all the influences line up.
And I mean, I think that A24 are a really good, obviously, studio. They pick awesome directors and kind of got them to do awesome stuff. And we also, outside of those kind of horror movies, we obviously took a lot of inspiration from like True Detective and the HBO shows and Prestige TV, basically. I think
I was going to mention True Detective because season 1 and 4 in particular, kind of doing a lot, like sort of recent rewatch and like seeing like a lot of the stuff and doing that, like the Leonardo DiCaprio meme where he's like clicking and like I know.
Yeah, exactly. I think there was True Detective, and the dynamics between those two detectives, but also just I think like the cinematography and the kind of slightly slow burn approach to storytelling was definitely something that we took from those shows. But in general, like even things like Seven, we kind of like. I think that there's a lot of stuff in Seven in terms of its aesthetics that we kind of took into Dark Place, like that and Taxi Driver. That slightly more grimy New York streets, and then also in Seven, it's just raining all the time, and we wanted it to feel like that as well because it gives this level. We try to use weather also as a storytelling mechanic, so like we try and use it as an escalation tool. So like especially in the Dark Place, as you're kind of progressing through, the rain can get kind of more heavy as things get deeper and kind of you're going in deeper into the Dark Place. We try and use, because it's like such a narrative driven game, we try and use like everything. So whether it's weather effects or if it's like the foliage or like the lighting or the audio, we're trying to use everything as a way to create a story, and that's just kind of like how we try and build up how you like that sense of. It's all about how we want the player to feel effectively. Like there's like, as we're going through, we're like, we really want the player to feel like this. So how do we get them to feel like that? And it's a lot of work by a lot of talented people to try and get us there. So.
Yeah, and some incredible level design as well, particularly in the Dark Place. I think with the dream logic, and that kind of feeds into that kind of exploration side of survival horror and kind of not fully knowing where you're going, having to backtrack a lot, and then it twists it to a whole new dimension because you're going upstairs to reach the bottom floor and all this sort of thing. So
that was really difficult, actually. Our lead mission designer, Anna Marie, she did a GDC talk actually on the level design of Alan Wake 2, and she goes into quite a lot of detail about like the problem with the Dark Place is that it's because it's dream logic, and people struggle to understand dream logic because it can be so abstract. Trying to learn the rules of how a space works when it's built on dream logic is very difficult, and it was much easier for us on the Saga side because it's kind of a bit more grounded. We had things to ground you to, whereas in Dark Place we started off with like crazy stuff going on and people just going like, kind of looks cool, but like, why is this happening? Like there's nothing for me to kind of like connect to, like on a, like, why is this work like this, or how does this. So we took us a long time to find the right level of dream logic and how to build spaces so that they still felt like they were working on dream logic, but they were not so abstract and obtuse that you just could not understand how to navigate this space. Because when you can't rely on certain things in a game, like certain rules, like we try and make a contract with the player, like this is how this game's going to work, and we can break it sometimes, but like if it's broken all the time, or like the contract is just a bunch of gibberish, then like it's very difficult for people to learn how to play the game, basically. So we did struggle with that for quite a long time. And that's why it took us, like, we did the proof of concept for the nursing home for Saga, and we did another proof of concept, which was kind of like the streets and the subway. We kind of extended it way more in the final game. But it took us ages to get that kind of like, how do we rewrite reality? How does that work? Like, what does the player do with it? How much is there puzzles there? How much do you have to kind of do it? Because it's kind of an optional thing. So we struggled a lot with that stuff during the course of development.
Yeah, I think I got the hang of it generally by the end, like to sort of go back to go forward, go up to go down. It was just initially kind of disorienting, but then it does feel like it's weird rules, but there's rules there. There's still something at least. So
yeah, I mean, we tried to have a few set things that we tried to basically utilize tool wise. I mean, also just like even like we utilized neon signs to guide you, but people just did not get that for like the longest time. Like we would,
I was one of those people. I
yeah,
understood it eventually because I think Alan says something like, "Oh, the signs are leading me," and because he like
yeah,
does like a bit of narration, I was like, "Oh my god, they are!" And then like seeing other things, like there is loads of subtle hints and help in there that you discover as you go through, and as you get further in, I feel like you become like a master of the dream logic as it goes on.
yeah.
But that
I
it
found
pushes you out is good.
Yeah, it's funny. That's like always our backup. Like we try and hint to like many different ways to hint how things work, and if people still aren't getting it, we're like, character's going to tell them. Like we're gonna have the character tell you what is going on here because like people just wouldn't understand otherwise. It's like our final like, okay, if we have to date, and so there's actually two. There's like we'll put it in the objectives,
Mm.
or we'll get the character to tell you, or we'll do both, and then like so we that's like our backup way to get people to go through and understand how certain things worked.
Yeah. And obviously at the moment you're currently working on so if I got this right, the things that are coming for Army 2 are photo mode, which I know a lot of people are very excited for. And then there's two DLCs, Night Springs and Lake House.
Yeah.
So how much is there anything you can tell us at this point, or is it
No, I
all
cannot say
lock
anything.
and key?
Like whenever I go on these interviews, like I have like Thomas Puha coming up to me and going like, "Don't talk about DLC. don't even if they start talking about it, deflect. Talk about something else. Move the conversation on." See, I can't really say anything. I can't say anything
Yeah.
at all, other than what you just said that we're working on Night Springs and we're working on the Lake House. So.
Is it the Sam Lake House? Is that what it is?
Oh God, I don't
I
know.
can't even say no.
I can't even say anything. I didn't even hear that question. Actually.
Yeah, I feel like if Thomas Puha told me not to say something, I would be like, okay.
Yeah, he can be intimidating when he wants to be like and like he was the person who's telling me to get off Reddit and get off the forums. He's like, "This is our job, Kyle. You just made the game. Now you have to do this as well." And I'm like, I need to do everything. I need to train. I need to be involved in everything. So
Yeah. It's like, no, you're just a creative person. We put you there and then keep you in the box to make things, and then
yeah.
don't venture out onto the internet and say stuff.
Yeah, and like he's like, go and play some more of those. There's loads of games coming out. You surely want to go and play. Because what was it though? There's like a lot of indie games that I've just noticed coming out in the last like week actually that I'm like, oh my god, I really need to play these. There's that new like
Crow Country.
Is it Crow
yes,
Country? Is it
yes, yes, I really want to play it. It looks so cool. Like, have you played it?
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
We had Tom and Adam who developed it on the show previously, actually talking about it. But yeah,
awesome. Yeah, we need to get to it. It looks great.
highly
Phil's
recommended.
platinumed it. Phil's platinumed it already.
Ah, wow. Okay, it must be really good then.
Yeah.
There's also like, is it Indica or
Yeah.
the nun one? That looks
Yeah.
also really interesting. I guess it's not really survival horror; it's like an adventure game, but definitely has like atmospherics that are kind of horror-like based on what I saw. So
It's creepy nun business, so it's got to
Yeah.
be it's the horror stuff.
Yeah.
I am most excited for Autopsy Sim at the moment. I keep anyone that listens, I will say I'm excited for Autopsy Simulator because it looks like the autopsy of Jane Doe, kind of that sort of vibe.
I really like that movie.
And I
Yeah.
feel like that as a game would absolutely slap.
So I don't know anything about that actually. Is it a simulator? Like you're actually autopsying people?
Yeah, you're just like fiddling around in the
And
guts.
there's like scary stuff going on around you while you're doing it, or that would be cool. If it
It's
was.
not out yet, so we don't have
It's not like Surgeon Simulator where everything's a bit.
Is it gonna go like "Brrr," if I do something right?
Yeah, it's Operation. You're right.
Exactly, Operation. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's that's out in June, but yeah, waiting for that one at the moment. But Crow Country is fantastic. People are absolutely eating it up at the moment. It's really good.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna take Thomas's advice and stop looking at Reddit and start playing it. I think.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, there's been an awful lot of good horror games in general, but specifically survival horror over the last couple of years.
Yeah, is it not Signalis? Is it?
Yeah, Signalis.
Yeah, I played that. That was really good. Yeah. I enjoyed that.
You're saying all the right games. I can feel Phil being like, yes.
Yeah, Signalis won the year before you guys did, so you're alumni as far as that goes. So
awesome.
Got to play each other's games,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I definitely I remember playing it and going like, oh, this is like a hark back to kind of like, old school horror games, which was really cool. And it looks like, is it, sorry, what was it called? Crow
Country.
Crow Country. It is Crow Country. It looks like it has like Final Fantasy VII aesthetics mixed with Resident Evil original Evil gameplay or something. It's quite interesting. Yeah.
I think that's a good way of describing it, to be fair, because it's got that kind of like 3D kind of model and then beautiful background, but it's a little more, the backgrounds are built rather than like paintings like they are in Final Fantasy. But it's just very good. I think if you like Alan Wake too, I think you'll enjoy it. So.
Oh, I mean, I'm a bit like keen on Alan Wake, a little bit, you know.
Partial. So.
Partial. Yeah, exactly.
It's all right.
It's all right. Actually, at this point, I'm kind of like done playing Alan Wake 2. I've played this game so much. Like when we were shipping the game, like all I was doing was just playing the game over and over and over and over and over and over again. And I was playing it at home. Like we were getting keys from Sony and Epic to play it on like PS5, whatever. So I was at home playing it on my PS5. I was playing it with the 3D headset, the PS5 3D headset, and I remember messaging Thomas on WhatsApp, going like, Thomas, I think the 3D audio is busted. Like I can't hear anything, or like it's all like something's weird. And then he was like, it's fine, don't worry about it. And I was like, no, it's definitely something wrong. So then I sent a message to our audio director going like, you need to check out something with the 3D audio. It's totally weird. And then they sent a message going like, oh shit, yeah, there's something really, and it's just like, just as we were meant to be like a few days before we were meant to release, they're like, yeah, it's totally broken. Like, and they're basically there's something with how they encoded the audio, the wrong encoding was done. And it didn't, not only did it break the surround sound, like the headset surround sound, it also meant that all of the like echo scenes and how we kind of, because we use a lot of like audio to drive visuals in the game, like all the echo scenes are basically audio driven. So when characters speak, the kind of live action flickers in and out. All of that was broken. Like just like a few days, like when I was playing, and I was like, holy crap, yeah. So those are the kind of things that we were kind of dealing with when we were trying to ship the game.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So I was playing at home. Like I've played that game way too much now.
So can you play it blindfolded? Is it that much?
I mean, I'm not like those speedrunners who can like beat Sekiro with blindfolds on. Have you seen that? That's crazy. Like they literally can complete these kind of. I can't even play those games like when I can see. Never mind if I'm blindfolded. And they speedrun it as well. Yeah, I'm not like that. I can't play it like that, actually, unfortunately.
I think one of my friends has like beat a game with her dog, like trained her dog to jump at things to be able to control a controller. Like the Dark Souls is wild. It's literally wild.
Yeah, my dog can hardly like eat his own food. Never mind. Never mind play for a Dark Souls game.
Dog Souls.
Yeah. It's funny.
So just kind of conscious of where we are. Like obviously I think it'd be fun to kind of shine a bright light and obviously try and get as much information as you can about what's coming up, but obviously I know you get in very much trouble if you said that. But if we talk about other things that are coming up to distract you, have you got any other games on your list for this year that are coming out that you're like, right, need to play that, other than what we've already mentioned?
I mean, well, I'm trying to do a mixture of like playing games, watching all of the new movies that are coming out, like because like there's been some, like I really like the new Dune movie. I saw it like 3 times in the cinema. So after that I kind of like, obviously I really like the first one, but the second one in particular I really like. So I've been trying to, I never read the books, so I picked up all the books and just been collecting artwork and stuff. I don't know if, and like there's art books for it, like, and I think the cinematography in those movies is so good that like, so I've just been kind of like doing a lot of like looking into like movie practices. Like I've been there's a lot of books that I was recommended actually by like different people in the industry. So I've been kind of picking up some interesting books on like directing actors and like how different movie directors kind of like the story of different like kind of like famous movie directors like Scorsese and the like. So kind of been looking at that stuff. And then game wise, been playing like Resident Evil Rebirth. That's kind of like my game at the moment, because it's like it's quite a long game. So I kind of try and play. I play these one like because I don't have lots of time to play games. So I kind of like I'll have one big game that I'm kind of playing through, which is kind of Rebirth, and then I'll kind of dabble in like shorter games to try and finish them, because I know it's going to take me so long to play the long one. So like I'll pick up these kind of like shorter experiences. Like I started, well, it's actually not that short, but I started Sea of Stars. the
Yeah.
yeah. So I started that just like a week ago, and I was like, well, I'll just dabble in this, and now I'm like 12 hours in. Like it's just like super. Don't know why. It just feels different. Like it feels like when I was a kid. Basically, I've got that kind of like nostalgia feeling to it. So yeah, dabbling in a lot of different games. Rebirth's my kind of main game. Really looking forward to Hellblade 2.
I was gonna
Mm,
say, I bet you're a Hellblade guy, like
Yeah,
100%.
yeah. It's. First of all, I really like Norse mythology and like Viking culture, and like just kind of interested in that. Have been for a while, and I kind of really like the first one, and so I just kind of really want to go back into that world. And they're a bit. I feel like Ninja Theory are a bit like Remedy. They kind of are doing these slightly more different games. Like they have an interesting take on storytelling and how to kind of uh, relay, like how to do character driven moments, and kind of how to utilize. I think they actually utilize live action even in the first Hellblade in a similar kind of way that we did. So like I think there's just a lot of similarities of how we make games. So really looking forward to that one. I think that the the visuals on that are going to be ridiculous. So I'm really looking forward to that. And there's people at Remedy who've got like family members even who work at Ninja Theory. So it's like it's a British studio as well. So kind of
Oh, I
want to
love
support.
that.
Yeah.
No, Hellblade, the new one looks incredible. Just the teaser trailer of Senua being like "Ah, ah, ah," with all the with all the black paint on was amazing. But yeah, I think
Yeah.
the similarities between your guys' games, I think that's why I say I feel like it would be your sort of thing, just because it's the reality bending, the internal mental like conflict stuff that's kind of played out with different scenes. It's very Alan
and
Wake and Senua would
yeah,
talk a lot, wouldn't they? Like they would get
Yeah.
on.
Exactly.
and obviously the kind of like cultural links. I mean,
Mm.
um, the way Alan Wake's taken it obviously is a bit more. Um, I think the modern kind of weirdness of like of that culture, whereas obviously there's like more.
It's funny,
Like you
Remedy have had like Norse mythology sprinkled throughout all of our games, harking back to Max Payne. So it's just I think it's just a thing inside our universes, actually, in our games in general.
mm,
But yeah, I think that you know we know we're not part of Scandinavia, but we are part of the Nordics, and so the kind of that there's a kind of relationship there in terms of like Iceland and Finland. So yeah, I think that people in the studio also just we also look at these games of like how the hell have they made their facial animation tech so good, or like trying to talk like how do they do this thing, or like I think that they take their, for example, costuming super seriously in that game. So I think they do a lot of like photogrammetry on how they build their outfits and costumes to kind of make it feel authentic. So I think there's the kind of player side of us which is kind of super interested in just playing those games, but also from a development perspective, we're just also super keen to learn off other developers about how they do stuff, and is there things that we can learn from them to kind of incorporate in our own development practices. And a lot of like people often ask me, like, as a game developer, does it ruin playing games for you? Because like, are you always just trying to figure out how they did something? And for me, it's kind of a mixture of the both. I can switch my mind off. I've done it such a long time now that like I can just play it as a player. And then if I'm playing and I'm like, oh, that's interesting, I should think about that. I'll make a note of it, but then I'll just come back to it later. I'll kind of like remember to I'll make a note so I have these kind of things that I want to come back to look at it from a like slightly more like development perspective. But try and enjoy games for what they're meant to be, which is entertainment product to kind of like immerse yourself in the world and stuff. So I didn't want to lose that when I moved into game development. I've managed
yeah.
to keep it.
So not like one of those guys who watch it when you watch a movie and your job's in it and going, that would never happen. That's not right.
No, I can like suspend disbelief like pretty well. I don't care, whatever. It's
Yeah.
just get me in. Like I'm not one of those people who kind of call out all these. That doesn't make any sense.
Mm.
Like, well, actually, that's a lie. I do that sometimes on movies. Like sometimes people will go like, "Did you see that movie? It was really like Saltburn was the last one." They're like, "Did you see
Mm.
that movie?" And I was like, "Yeah, it was. The start was good, but like." I was like halfway through, I was like, this doesn't make any sense. These characters are doing stuff that makes zero sense. Like, so yeah, there's a bit of that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so one thing, just before we kind of wrap up, one thing I wanted to ask: there's been a lot of response, obviously huge positive response to Alan Wake, but there's also been a lot of people who have been asking about whether or not a physical edition is on the horizon, and that's obviously something you took the decision to cut costs to make the game cheaper to not do. Is that something that you guys are sticking to, or have you seen a lot of feedback and possibly considering revisiting that?
Yeah, that's not, much like DLCs, those are things that I've been told cannot talk about. There's like a bunch of red light. Cannot talk about this. Cannot talk about this. Cannot talk about this.
Thomas is standing behind the camera, like
he's actually over here. He's like he's got a sword, and he's like, what are you gonna say? Yeah, I mean, I obviously we understand, we get it. But yeah, I can't really. Yeah, buy a thermos. You can get that. That's those are coming in stock. Yeah.
Hold on. I can show them in my. There you go. The little Alan Wake shrine, very up there.
We have more.
The remake one
coming in stock. Yes, you've got Yeah, we have those coming into stock now because obviously they're also super popular. So.
Yeah, I still need to get my hands on one of them. I don't have one yet.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like we didn't really anticipate that people would be that excited about them. Honestly, so but I'm glad that we managed to kind of work with. I think we're selling them through 8-bit. I don't know. I can't remember. I think it's something like that in the US, and then we have them on Amazon now as well. Amazon Germany, I think they are. And
I think everyone's getting them just in case we get the chance to do like a slow coffee drink with Sam.
Yeah, I mean, it was funny because he was like telling me that he's like, I need to do something. I feel like I want to, but it needs to be easy that I can do anywhere. And then he was like, I came up with this thing of drinking coffee, and I think it started with Remaster. Like he did a bunch of promotional stuff where like he was in a lake drinking some coffee, like for promo stuff for Remaster, and it kind of just spun on from there. So now he's got two angled approach. I think he's got when he drinks a coffee with someone else, and there's just like him just drinking coffee in random places. So yeah.
Sam wasn't drinking coffee in a lake. It wasn't a lake. It's an ocean.
It was a lake. I was saying like I should do like the English version, which is obviously drinking tea, and then see how that goes. We could do like one tea and one coffee.
Oh, that would be good. Well, we're gonna watch for that now. I'm still adamant that you've got to have your dance number in the next Remedy game. You've got to be programmed in, and you've got to do your dance number.
I have to find a way. But seeing how like. If I had to go on stage at the Game Awards and dance, I was perfectly happy just watching that. I was like, I'm kind of glad that I'm not up there having to do this dance. Actually, Sam came back because like when we were there, he came back and he was like, "Oh my god, I messed the whole thing up. Like I was meant to be in a place because they had like markers where they were meant to go, and he was way off the marker. He's like, I had to scuffle over. I was like, Sam, no one knows. Don't worry about it.
I was just saying, all you could tell from his face that he was like absolutely the happiest anyone's ever been in the entire world. So
the reason that was also is because like when they were doing rehearsals, the choreographer person was like, he was doing it. He's like, you need to smile more, Sam, like when you're doing this. Like, and then I think he took it to heart and was like, I can just imagine him on stage, like doing the dance going like, oh shit, she told me to smile. Let's kind of imagine that's kind of went through his head.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah, it was fun times.
Oh, well, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you about all things Alan Wake and horror and dancing choreography related. Obviously, we look forward to see what comes next from Alan Wake 2, and I'm sure there's anyone who's out there who's listening to this or watching who has not yet discovered Alan Wake, you definitely should get on it. It's absolutely I think masterpiece is definitely the word to use for...
I don't know, it's 89 on Metacritic. So.
It's not quite a 90, but it's all right.
You're killing me here, guys.
No, thank you very much again. I really appreciate it, and again, congratulations on all the love and everything that Alan Wake is receiving. And
thank you very much.
Long may it continue,
you guys. Yeah, very good. Thank you very much.
All right, and thank you everyone for watching. And we will catch you again next time. This has been Talking Terror, the official podcast of the Horror Game Awards. Thank you very much for listening. Check out the links in the description for more info on where to follow our guests in order to support them and keep up to date with their work. The Horror Game Awards will be airing live on YouTube on Saturday 16th of December. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel to avoid missing out on what promises to be a very exciting night of awards and game reveals, as well as future episodes of this podcast and other content. Thanks again for joining us, and we hope to see you next time.